Hi guys. So first thing you want to do today is add this to number 9 on your tracker. Today we're going to be adding and subtracting two functions. So this is called doing a composition function. Means you're doing more than one thing at a time. Kind of like when we were doing compositions of transformations, when we were doing like a reflection and a rotation or two reflections, like when you did that shooting star activity. So compositions are things you do when you're doing more than one, or like a conjunction of things. So at any time, if I'm going too fast or you need more time to write, just hit pause, and otherwise just take some good notes on the first few and then you'll get to try some on your own. Okay, so these can look a little bit intimidating when you first start, but what you've got here are two different functions. We have g of n is one function, and then we have f of n as another function. And you've done some before where you have to choose which function to use. But in this particular problem, you're going to be using both of them. So first you're going to find g of this, z minus 2. And then you're going to find f of z minus 2. And then when you're done finding both of those, you're going to take your two answers and you're just going to add them because that's what this composition says to do. So these first few are a little complicated because what we're plugging in to g, z minus 2, is not just one number, it's an expression. When we plug an expression in, we're going to end up with variables in our answer because we're plugging variables in, so we're still going to have some variables in our answer, and we'll just simplify by combining like terms and things. So we still do it the same way. For this g function here, wherever we saw an x or a variable, we're going to plug in this stuff in parentheses. So instead of n, where the variable is, we're plugging in z minus 2. So this is going to say z minus 2, cross my z, plus 3. Okay, so that's that part. And then plus, so we'll do these two things separately. We'll do this whole function first. So z minus 2 plus 3. It doesn't really need parentheses on it. I just kind of put it there to show you that it was its own thing. So we'll combine like terms is there. So the negative 2 and the 3 can go together. So I'll really have z plus 1 because negative 2 plus 3 is 1. So that one's done. There's nothing else I can combine since z's and 1's can't go together. So that's that expression plus f. So now I'm going to plug z minus 2, this stuff in parentheses, wherever there's a variable. So it's going to go in right here for n. So this time I'll have 3 times z minus 2 plus 5. So I just replaced this variable. I just plugged in like we always do. But what I'm plugging in is z minus 2. So it's a little bit longer than usual. So if 3 is multiplying to that, I've got to distribute. So what intimidates kids about this is how it looks. There's a lot of notation, but you understand how to distribute. So these problems are just combining a lot of simple things into one bigger thing. So 3 times negative 2 will be negative 6 plus 5. So if I combine like terms on this one, negative 6 plus 5 is going to give me negative 1. So I have 3z minus 1. Alright, so then I bring down the rest of it. So I'll have z plus 1 plus 3z minus 1. So the two expressions are going to get added together because that's what this original problem told us to do. So adding just means combine like terms. So the z's can go together. Z and 3z is going to give us 4z. And then 1 minus 1 actually cancels out. So I don't have anything else. So my answer is just 4z. That's a simplified version. Now don't get nervous. Just make sure if you need to rewind and watch it again, that you watch it again. If you need to pause as I'm going through things and try a couple steps on your own in pencil, and then watch it and see how you did, that's fine. So let's try number 2 if you're ready. If not, just pause it. So let's see. On number 2, I've got the g function, n minus 3, and then I've got the f function of opposite of n. So this one we got to be real careful when we're doing the negative ones because we got to make sure, we put that negative in front of our formula. So for g, I'm going to be plugging 4n instead of n, And for f, I'm going to plug 4n instead of n. So for the g function, my 4n is going to go in right here. So I'm going to have 4n minus 3. Now this one again is an adding function, okay? So adding functions are not too difficult. It's when we subtract that we have to be a little bit careful. We'll get to one of those in a minute. So then for the f function, I'm putting 4n right there. Now that n means, that negative there means I have to include the negative, so negative 4n. And you might even think of it as being outside the parentheses, so negative 4n. But that negative outside is just going to make this negative 4n. And then if I'm plus a negative, that really just means minus. We don't need both signs. Now if it was minus a minus, we'd have to change it to plus. So we really have, just to show these separate, we have 4n minus 3 minus 4n. So the two 4n's cancel out. 4n minus 4n is going to be nothing. So our final simplified version is just negative 3. All right. Then, and again, rewatch if you need to. Pause. Try it again by yourself. See if you really understand what's going on. If you're ready, we'll start number 3 here. So we have an f function and we have a g function. And into the f function, I'm going to plug negative 4a instead of a, whatever variable is in there. And in the g function, I'm going to plug in negative 4a instead of the a that was in there. Now, what makes this one different is that this composition is subtraction. So that makes it trickier. Must distribute the subtraction. I'll show you what I mean. The minus. Okay, so the first one, when I plug negative 4a in right here, I'll get 2 times negative 4a minus 3. So I'll clean that up a little bit and I'll get negative 8a when I multiply minus 3. So that one's ready to go. Now I'm going to minus the other expression, okay? So what I want to make sure I do when I put minus is put all this stuff over here in a bracket so that I know I'm going to have to distribute this minus to what's ever over there. So this minus is a negative 1 that's really going to have to get distributed, because when you minus an expression, it doesn't just change the sign of the first. I'm going to put a negative 1 here so I know that's what that minus means. It doesn't just change the first term sign, it changes everything in there. So you'll see how that works here. So now I'm going to plug negative 4a into the g function for a. So I would have negative 4a plus 2. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. But I have to distribute this negative 1 here, okay? Since it's subtraction, it means minus this whole thing. And when you minus a negative term, you get a positive. But when you minus a positive term, you get a negative. So that negative had to get distributed to both terms, and it changed each of the signs. So this one became positive, and this one became negative. That's it. There's nothing else. That's just all you have to watch out for. So negative 8a minus 3, and then plus 4a minus 2. So when I combine like terms, negative 8a plus 4a is going to give me negative 4a, and then negative 3 minus 2 more is going to give me negative 5. Okay, and there's our final answer, because a's and 5's can't go together because one has a variable and one is just a constant. So notice I did not do this. I did not like plus 2, because these are not two sides of an equation. This is just an expression, so we just combine like terms to simplify. We don't have an equation, so we can't do the same thing to both sides. All we can do is clean it up a little bit. Again, pause, rewind, whatever you need to. We'll take a look at number 4 if you're ready here. So number 4 again has two functions. We've got our g function and we've got our h function. Into the g function, we're going to plug in 2a wherever a was. So that's going to have to get squared. So that's something you might not have done before. And then into the h function, we're going to plug 2a. And that's going to go in wherever a was right here. Okay, so first for the g function, 2a. So 2a, and then it has to get squared. So it's going to look like this. 2a squared minus 4a. So we'll kind of tidy this one up first. So 2a squared means 2a times 2a. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not, but how that works is you multiply the 2, so that'll be 4. And a times a, we can't exactly, that doesn't give us 2a because we're not adding the a's, we're multiplying. So if I look at that up here off to the side, a times a would be a squared. We don't know what a is, so we're just going to have to say it got squared. And then minus 4a. So we can't cancel these out because a squareds and single a's are not the same thing. All right, now this is another minus one, so we're going to have to watch out for that. So that minus is a -1 that has to get distributed, right? Then for the other function, we're plugging 2a in here. So that will be 2a plus 4. And then this negative has to get distributed, so it's really -2a and -4. So we bring down this stuff, 4a squared minus 4a. Now, there's no other a squared, so that one stays by itself. And then the a's can go together. So -4a minus 2a give us -6a minus 4. So none of those are like terms because like terms have to have the same variable with the same power. So that one is finished. Now, that's about as hard as it gets. So what you'll do is on your own, you'll try 5 and 6. See how you do. And then this next one I'm going to show you is number 7. Okay. So on number 7, 7 through 12 actually are simpler because you're still going to do two functions and you're going to either add or subtract them depending on what it's saying. But what we're plugging in is just numbers, so that's a lot easier. So this one's a subtraction one, so I know I'm going to have -1 get distributed to some stuff. But what I'm going to plug in is just an 8. So these are a lot simpler than when you're plugging variables in. So when I plug numbers in, I'm for sure going to just end up with numbers. So let's see, on the first one, when I plug 8 in for x, I'll have 2 times 8 minus 5. And then I've got my -1 here that's going to get distributed. And for the other one, I'm going to have 8 going in for x in this one, so I'll just have 8 minus 3. Now, I'll multiply here, so this will be 16 minus 5. And this I can actually do. Now remember, we have to do these two functions separately before we actually combine them. So I'm going to finish this one on the left. 16 minus 5 is just 11. Okay, so that's the first function. So I did the f function, just did this one, and I got 11. Now I'm going to minus whatever the g function is. And the g function is when I do 8 minus 3, I get 5. So -1 times 5 is just -5. So I'm really just doing 11 minus 5. So my final answer is 6. So when you have numbers, you can just simplify this side like we did to begin with, and then just minus it. But remember, if you're minusing a negative, this one was minusing +5. But if you minus the negative, you'd actually be adding. So watch out for that. So now you can do 8 through 12, and they're just plugging numbers in. Then when you're done with those, you can just pause this and then tune back in. And I won't even walk you through this one, but when you get to 13 through 16, this assignment was designed with the hardest ones at the beginning, and it gets easier and easier as you go along. So this one now is just like what you've been doing from the first day and in Renaissance. You're just going to find the one function for one number. So that means if you have this function and you want to find out what h of -9 is, all it means is you're going to plug -9 in for the variable. So this variable, -2 times -9 plus 2. And then just clean it up. Make sure you do order of operations. So powers first. Well, if there's anything to do in parentheses inside, you can do that, but usually there's not. Then you can do exponents first, then multiply and divide, then add and subtract. Okay, so you can do 13 through 16. Now when you're all done trying everything, check the key, okay? And if you get them wrong, see if you can check with someone near you and figure out where you went wrong. Was it a sign? Was it forgetting to do one function separately from the other function before you combined them? Or did you do just fine? And if you did just fine, there might be someone you can find that you could help. Really, really important that you independently are able to complete all 16 of these today so that you can find out where your questions are so I can help you when next time we get to talk. Okay? Good luck, and you can do it. Talk to you soon.